So excited that you're here to join us on day 2 of the NISTS 2021 annual conference. My name is Emily Kittrell, and I'm an assistant director here at NISTS. Talking earlier, it's been almost a year since I've been in the office, but here we are for the conference, our favorite event of the year, and we're thrilled that you're with us. We know yesterday was jam-packed with a lot of great content and sessions for learning, and this is going to be no exception. Day 2 filled to the brim with good stuff for everyone. So thank you for joining us for the award winner spotlight, our opportunity to chat with some of these amazing award winners, the transfer champions of this year. So I'm going to turn it over to them shortly, but I want to just announce 2 quick things. First, you may be seeing the closed captions or the live transcript scrolling across the bottom of your screen. You can certainly toggle that on or off by clicking that CC button at the bottom of your Zoom control panel. And also just quickly want to give a shout out to some of the featured sessions we have today. This is one of them. We're going to follow that up with the Ask the Experts session at 12. And then after that, the exhibit hall, and then another great plenary session. I'm super excited about that one. So check the schedule. Just a quick note, in the conference app, all of the times are listed there with every single session, and the app automatically adjusts to your time zone. So whatever time zone you see there in the app is exactly when the session will start for you. So again, thank you so much for being here. We are thrilled having all of you with us at the conference, and I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for the session, our advisory board member, Barbara Tobolowsky. So take it away, Barbara. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. Hello, everybody. I wish I could see you. I wish I could be there with you, but we welcome you for day 2. It is my honor today to be able to introduce to you the Catalyst and Rising Star Award winners. It is easy to be awed by their work, but we're hoping through this session that you're going to learn about the remarkable achievements, and over the next 45 minutes, you're going to hear a bit about their real life experiences and learn from their examples. You'll hear what motivates them even in the face of setbacks, which we all experience. You're going to learn about the small steps they've taken over time to lead to their successes, and leave with some takeaways that maybe you can apply to your own journey as a transfer agent and champion. So I'm going to get right to it. For Ms. Goldberg, you created a transfer leadership class for students. You created a district-wide transformation leadership conference. I love that. And you host the Harold Washington College Alumni Transfer Rockstar Reunion, to name just a few of your accomplishments. These are new ventures that brought many challenges, I'm sure. What tested you the most, and what kept you motivated to continue your work with transfer students?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that thoughtful question, Barbara. Really good question. So over the years, lots of things have tested me, but if I could give one answer, it would be things like the ability to actually, and I know we can all relate to this, the ability to actually shut off the work in times of leisure. So for instance, like I am always either thinking about work or talking about work with everyone. So that's one of the things that has totally tested me. And I'll give you an example. This is a true story. I was in Spain on my honeymoon in 2015, and once a day, like clockwork, we would go and to a cyber cafe, and for an hour, I would check my email. So just to give you an example of how passionate I am and how much I identify with this meaningful work. And then the second part of the question is really fun to answer. What motivates me to continue is the students. The students are such rock stars, honestly, and I love working with them every single day. I know we can all understand how this feels when we get an email from one of our favorite students and they say, guess what? Not only did I get into my dream school, but I even got full funding, and it just feels so good to get that kind of positive feedback. And secondly, and I'll be brief, is that every year, you mentioned, Barbara, my colleagues and I host a conference, a one-day conference aimed at helping students to transfer to their dream schools. And every year I think to myself, like, Ellen, why do you do this? This is a lot of work. And then every year at the end of the day, I feel such a sense of accomplishment, and a student will say, like, that was the best day ever. And then I realize this is why we do the work. So thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. Dr. Tincher-Ladner, you made amazing strides when you were at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College in institutional research. And then you took on the leadership of the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society. So we've just heard about starting some new traditions with Ms. Goldberg, but how do you take on something that's been established for so long? And what were the challenges and opportunities associated with that?
That's a really good question. Not too many people ask me that. I think I'm the third CEO in a 103-year-old organization, so there's really no pressure there, right? But, you know, when you take on a role like this, such a large organization with such tremendous success already, you know, I think as a new leader, I was, you know, looking at it as, oh, okay, I'm going to be over all these people. And of course, if we have new initiatives, they're going to take on and do these things. But we're also leading 3,000 volunteer advisors inside of the community colleges who are our transfer navigators. So, you know, just looking at it, when you come into an organization, you want to make all these great changes, but it's really you have to be very careful not to pull the pendulum too far the other way and start building on the successes of the organization. So having said that, with reference to transfer, you know, about 53 years ago, we landed our first transfer scholarship for students, and we've added 800 cents. So that was sort of the core of what we were doing for students. We were looking at their financial needs. But, you know, we weren't really looking at the changes that the colleges had undergone. Like if you think about a first generation student and their knowledge of transfer is a little more limited. They don't have anyone in their family to look at and say, here's how you transfer, here's the steps, or even if they want to go to a selective school. And then you add on top of that the tremendous push of community colleges to go into high schools and have dual enrolled credit. So you're looking at first gen students who are also dual enrolled, and they're not they're not on campus. So, you know, we had to put some real thought into how are we going to really help these students. And that sort of, you know, gave birth to sort of some of the other things we've been doing, like Transfer Edge, which is a course. We've had thousands of students take this course, and it, you know, they may want to transfer in their backyard, or they may want to transfer to a selective 4-year school, and this really navigates them through every step of the way. And it was written by students, the curriculum. So, you know, we had to kind of step back and always look at the whole problem through the eyes of the student. I think that as colleges, we're always looking at retaining students, but students don't see themselves as being retained. They see themselves as persisting and moving through to a 4-year school, most of them. So, you know, we just looked at that problem through their eyes and developed that curriculum for one thing. And we looked at recognizing 4-year schools that were doing a better job of getting students to transfer. So all of these things were so important to the work we've done with transfer recently, but it was a really great question. And thank you for that.
Thank you so much. For those of you who are here, you're going to start noticing in the chat some links to the work that these great award winners have done. So feel free to do that to find out more about what they've done. Dr. Wang, your research has shed light on the enduring inequities of transfer, particularly in STEM. How have you found ways to influence change through your work?
Well, thank you so much, Barbara, and greetings to all of you. As someone who identifies as a community college and transfer student researcher, being recognized by this huge honor from the organization for transfer students today, alongside this amazing company, is a very humbling validation. And as I think about Barbara's great question about how to use my equity-driven research to influence change, I immediately recognize that the biggest secret, as both Lynn and Ellen have already shared, and also reward, is that by focusing on the transfer student experience, it creates an instant bond between me and the practical field and colleagues like you all in the audience who hold the most influence for change. So when sharing my research across venues, I always follow where students led me and try to truthfully share their stories first, followed by a collaborative discussion with colleagues about what should or shouldn't change given their own context. So for me, centering students is a profoundly powerful foundation for my research to make its way to the practical field. And so really starting with this foundation, I try to, albeit imperfectly, facilitate change through building community in two main ways. Number one is to view institutions and colleagues that provide access to transfer research as vital partners rather than this detached sense of research sites. And number two is closely related to that. Not only I strive to respect, but I strive to ensure that community colleges and transfer educators' priorities, knowledge, and input are at the forefront when making sense of the student experiences or when collaboratively framing research questions. And then related to that, I also have a very important number three. In the interest of time, I wouldn't go into details, but I really want to highlight the importance of researchers giving back to the students and to the research sites. This can take numerous forms. I want to close by saying just at the end of the day, I view the production of research as an important but only incremental step toward better serving transfer students, which cannot happen without practitioner colleagues doing the work and leading the way. So when I share findings, I always share this positionality that I view ourselves, or at least myself, in my efforts to conduct equity-driven transfer research, and as a teacher and as an advisor, to be never perfect, but ever learning and unlearning, ever evolving, and always reflective. And that always resonates with the transfer educators I've been in community with. And truthfully, your commitment to your students and your openness to change and action have been my biggest learning and inspiration, as this very transfer researcher in me strives to find ways to ensure that my research could be of utility to the transfer field.
Thank you so much. If there is time, I may go back to see how can researchers give back. We'll see where we are at the end. Ms. Esparza, you've accomplished so much for transfers with the development of the Transfer Academy and everything else that you're doing at Austin Community College. Part of that was the introduction of a series of workshops to help students understand the fundamentals of transferring. So what motivates you to keep doing this work that you're doing?
So I think everybody at this conference knows that transfer is not an easy path. And working at a community college where 50% of our students come in and say that they are starting at ACC so that they can get to their dream institution or they can continue on to get a bachelor's degree. I mean, that really drives us. And our institution, you know, I'm very lucky that I work at an institution that really prioritizes transfer. What Ellen said earlier about getting that email from, and she said that favorite student, but one of the things that really motivates me is getting an email from a student that has never once talked to me, never talked to anybody from our team. You know, maybe they've come to events and learned something or visited our website and got a piece of information that really helped them clarify the process. That is really rewarding. Our team is it's a wonderful team of individuals who meet with students who are planning to transfer. And we have a form online where students can request an appointment. And I pulled together a few of the examples of what students ask for, just to kind of highlight where our students are lost. And so here's the list real quick. I don't know what each school is looking for in an essay, and I'm lost. I don't know where to start. I've never applied to school, so I think a meeting would help me a lot. I need help deciding if I'm ready to transfer or if I should take more classes first. I'm looking to transfer. I don't know what credits will transfer to the school I'm interested in. I've emailed the university, but I haven't heard back, and the deadline is approaching. I'm a DACA recipient and I need help with the application and financial aid. I need to know what options are available to me. I'm planning to transfer to a four-year college, but I'm not sure if I will be able to attend due to financial reasons. And then I think one that a lot of our students are facing right now is I received a bad grade in an online class because of COVID, and I'm not sure how that's going to impact my transfer options. So if I get to be that person that understands where the students are coming from, hear from them directly, but then also work with our administration and with other universities to make sure that we're addressing those problems in our policies and in our practices, that's really what motivates me. And I keep refreshing my email to see, you know, where are our students going and are they being successful?
Great, thank you. I had to write down all of these things. That's quite interesting to hear. Finances seem to be central to these issues. Dr. Buenaflor, please correct me. What's the correct pronunciation?
Buenaflor.
Buenaflor, thank you. You're involved with pre-transfer advising and the Transfer Experience Network and developing a seminar, among other things. What of all the things you've done, what transfer-related accomplishments are you most proud of?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. And I just have to echo what my colleagues have shared, that I'm so honored and humbled to be here. And I think one of the things that's so great about the folks in this space is that we all come from very different contexts in our own institutions and in the students that we work with and serve. And so in my role being at a four-year institution, I do support students through pre-transfer advising, orientation, and the admission process. But I think something that I'm most proud of and what I'd like to speak to today is the work that we've been doing recently with onboarding students. We see so much in the research, the challenges that students face when they go through the adjustment process at a four-year institution. And I think one of the things that's really great is that I really have the opportunity to take some of the research that's out there and put it into practice and really think through the implications. So for example, we have an onboarding program that we do at the start of each semester. In the fall, we refer to it as our fall transfer welcome. The students like to use the hashtag FTW for the win to indicate that they're here to be successful at the four-year school. And we've integrated opportunities to really think through academic study skills, how to be successful as a student in the four-year environment. We provide students with opportunities to network directly with their faculty. We do departmental breakouts so that they can be with their faculty. They can tour lab facilities and get some hands-on experiences. And they also have the opportunity to meet with current students who have already been successful transfer students and who have navigated a couple of semesters at the four-year school. I think when I come into my work, I really have a success-oriented lens. And so I want students to be able to see that as they are now admitted to the four-year school, they've already succeeded in so many ways and they have so many skills that they're bringing with them, and really trying to honor that. And similar to what Dr. Wang said, you know, centering the student voice, I think, is so important. And so constantly reflecting on my work and the programming that I'm doing to make sure that the student's voice is heard and that we're adapting and adjusting to best serve their needs. So again, thank you so much for the question. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. I'm taking lots of notes. Ms. Harris, you were instrumental in the development of the Transfer and Returning Student Resource Center at Portland State University that you're now leading. How are you working to overcome challenges at the institution, or maybe just challenges in general?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I would say, one, I'm not doing it alone. I have a wonderful team of colleagues and folks across the university. And I always say this, I stand on the shoulders of giants. There were a lot of people who went into forming a transfer center over many years, and I want to give them lots of credit for it. But I think my colleagues and I remain relentless advocates for transfer students, and we do that by centering the lived experiences of our students in our work and trying to remain really cognizant of that at all times. At Portland State, over 60% of our students, undergraduate students, are transfer students, 40% of them first generation Pell eligible. we're an urban institution, and so we're intrinsically linked to our community. So ways in which we amplify the voices of our community and what's happening is really important. And as Dr. Wang said, and you know, I'm a higher ed nerd, so I've read a lot of your work. Been that we really need to listen to our students. So asking them first, what do you need? And then doing what they tell us, right? But also trusting our colleagues who work directly with students. We have good relationships with folks in our admissions office, our new student orientation, and really talking to faculty who are passionate about serving our transfer students is really important. And having those strong relationships to both problem solve and dream big together. Like, what can we do together? And I have to take this shameless plug to call out my team, Cara, Lori, Shayna, Regina, and Josh, who are here today, because they really do this work at a different level than I do, and couldn't do it without them.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ireland, you're overseeing 2 large NSF-funded projects, specifically on serving the needs of transfer students. Through these projects, you mentor students, transfer students directly, and educate faculty about ways to support transfer students. What excites you for the future of transfer students on your campus, or in general, again, as well?
Thank you for that question and for this acknowledgement and opportunity to engage with this community. It's funny because, you know, we were doing this work, both of those grants sit in our College of Engineering and IT, which is one corner of the campus. And it's been interesting to watch over the past almost 5 years how those projects and this award have really grown the awareness and thoughtfulness among not only faculty, but also staff and administrators about the needs and experiences and the assets that transfer students have to offer our campus community. I'm noticing, of course, faculty in the classroom are becoming more sensitive. It's coming up in department meetings and planning meetings with the undergraduate committees, but also even the staff who might be leading divisions that hire student workers, right, are thinking about how, the transfer students are new to campus, but they've got a skill set, they've got prior work experience, they've got, you know, there's a growing that stigma that might have existed or just total ignorance is really starting to erode. It's also interesting to me to see how people are becoming individual transfer champions in their own corner or spaces of campus. So again, what had started as something that was very particular to computing and engineering is now starting to pop up in conversations in arts and humanities and bio and other spaces so that our university is more cohesive around that support. Word is spreading that the reality is that 50% of our undergraduate population are transfer students. And so people didn't really, the only people that knew that were the admissions folks. And so it's been really cool to see, again, how our campus community is really kind of pulling together. Even the institutional advancement folks, as they're raising funds, are going to folks and saying, hey, this is an area that we can invest in, transfer scholarships at the university level, right? So that's those conversations weren't happening before. And again, this award, the visibility through this award, I'm seeing in the past few months has really helped for that. And then just lastly, I wanna say in terms of what I'm looking forward to, based on that and what I've been talking about as our post-pandemic higher ed reality. Is that we're all really striving and working through unprecedented challenges. But in that context, I'm observing transfer students doing really amazing things and, you know, demonstrating success that I think is indicative of some of those skills and assets that they've already been developing and working through their own trajectories and challenges. And so I'm really excited about the way that they will lead in modeling resilience and adaptability and, you know, what you need to do if you have to adjust your way of doing school, or when your plan and your schedule are thrown off. Folks who fit into a box around how to do 4 years of undergraduate education are now being confronted with some harsh realities about, you know, how to make sense of your future plan. And I think our transfer students in particular are really going to be able to model in the face of that tremendous adaptability, flexibility. And it's a good opportunity for campus communities to elevate those profiles and to have those students show up as leaders among their peers.
Thank you. I see we have some time, so I am going to follow up with a few other questions. One is, it sounds like for each of you, it's been very important to have partners around campus. This is not something you can do on your own. It's what I'm hearing. how are you able to build these bridges to people across campus and other places when everybody's busy? And it requires them taking on something else, thinking about something else, where institutions oftentimes are not focused on our transfer students. So if you can let me know, I can call on you, or we can try to see. Dr. Ireland has raised her hand, so we'll start with you.
I'm sorry, this is really fresh on my mind because we are really talking about this right now as a college community. It's interesting because in our college, we've got engineering departments and we've got more computing focused departments. And just in terms of the labor market, we're seeing the ways that undergraduate enrollments are, some departments have enrollment pressure and are really over enrolled. And then there are some departments who are really eager and motivated to strategize to get more students into the department. And so what we've been doing is thinking about the motivations of the department leaders and figuring out how how to communicate how this work helps to meet that need, right? So for example, the department that is dealing with enrollment pressure, they're not necessarily saying, oh, we need to bring in more transfer students, right? So we talk with them about how, one, the inflow doesn't stop. You don't have control over who applies, and, but that you also want your retention and graduation numbers to look very good. What you don't want is for your data to show that you're not serving transfer students well. So let's think about the levers and the pain points in your curriculum so that the pathway is smoother for students who are going to be coming in regardless, so that they can have really good outcomes and you can boast that you have success with students that are coming in from community colleges. The flip side of that, we're working with another department that has had a decline in enrollment over the past few years, and they are very actively saying, hey, can you set us up with community colleges? Can you be the bridge? Because we know that you already have those relationships. Can we bring our faculty to those departments to do research talks or to have conversations about programs and to talk about what a welcoming department we might be for them to receive them from the two-year institution. And so we're working that way to help make those connections between community college administrators and those departments. But I think for us, we had a eureka moment a few years into the project that, yeah, everybody's not coming to the table with the same motivations and needs. And I think, really working with those carrots helps to get folks involved and at the table and invested.
That's helpful to hear, because they're right that they have different motivations, but to consider those, that's helpful to hear. Anybody else want to comment on how they bridged the gaps across campus when people are so busy? This happens in my class. I'm never good at waiting, so I'll just move on. And if you want to speak to this,
Lynn's hand is up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Great, thank you. Please, Dr. Tincher-Ladner, tell me, how do you do it?
Well, it's not really across campuses here, but we have to work across all the institutions. But when we first started the idea of a transfer honor roll, like what four-year colleges are doing a good job with students, we looked purely at the numbers and, how many transfers do you have in your institution? And also how well are they doing? And making certain they give us this data back, we partnered with the National Student Clearinghouse. So all they had to do is click a button saying, yes, it's okay to pull my data from the National Student Clearinghouse, and let's take a look at that. But we're able to now, as our students use our transfer tools and look at scholarship opportunities across the United States, they now can determine how transfer friendly a college is, because along with those metrics, there's probably another 45 metrics that we use to sort of judge schools with. And it gives the colleges a chance to understand how they can improve their scores. But the students on their end, they're able to see how successful previous transfers have been. And the idea is to evolve this to be at the major level. Like, I'm an engineering student at Stanford, what is my chances of success? And so we're working toward that, but I think we've started a much larger conversation as these four-year colleges are trying to increase their schools. And that's one of the ways that we leverage those partnerships. I think moving forward in the future, four-year colleges really need to look at where these students really are and they are working, and they're only going to be coming full-time, I mean, part-time by and large. And I think that most of the transfer scholarships that we see are not really fitting the actual, student's profile of having to work and these other things. So I think that schools that step up and really look at what a transfer student looks like, and also lock in their transfer scholarship opportunities at that level, those will be the successful four-year colleges. That will be the success that they will have over the next several years.
You bring up such a good point that it's research helps us, and sometimes research is not talking about the students we have. So let me go back to Dr. Wang, who talked about ways that research can be used. And Ms. Harris spoke about how important it was to use research to design what she's doing. So if we could talk about what research has told us, and then also where we need research to go to help us in the future. So we'll start with Dr. Wang.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether you've seen, I was just nodding nonstop in response to, all these super awesome, observations. And I will say that my research has shown what Lynn was just talking about in terms of where financial aid or financial support in general for transfer students should be headed, because we have to just take into consideration the holistic life context of transfer students for that matter. So I think research is not going to have any credibility if the questions are not collaboratively developed and framed with practitioner colleagues' input at the forefront. And so that is really, I think, a guiding principle for me personally. I do it imperfectly, but that's my aspiration. And so I think this speaks partly to your question, Barbara, in terms of where I think the research should be going. I think any research should be guided by that principle. But I really think looking beyond the ideal transfer student or the ideal transfer pathway, spanning this entire educational journey, including aspiring, prospective transfer students. And so research that can take into consideration of every single life context and identity that matter to the students and to the student journey would be a substantive direction I would like to see my own work going, and that of other fellow researchers. So I'll just pause there because there's so much more credibility among all of you. And also, by the way, I saw Ellen's hand up in response to the previous conversation. So just wanted to note that. But thank you, Barbara. That's such a monumentally important question. I don't have the perfect answer. I will one day, hopefully.
I didn't see it. I don't know if hands are getting lost in the screen. So we'll go with Ellen then, and then whoever else would like to speak.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm so grateful. So I just wanted to shout out my colleagues. I really like what Randi said earlier about not being able to do this transfer work alone. It really takes all the assistance of the transfer village. And I wanted to say that the Rockstar College advisors at Harold Washington College, and also the faculty, both the advisors and the faculty really are transfer champions. And just to illustrate that, there was this time where one of my colleagues, who's a chemistry professor, showed up in my office with one of his students and said, "Hey, Ellen, I just want to let you know my student got into Yale." And I was like, what? Like, I've never met this student. I don't know who this student is. And actually I had never heard of a student from my school getting into that school. So I was really excited. And it turned out that the student was totally being mentored by two of his professors. And and I know we can all identify with this. Professors are in their office hours, are taking the time to talk to students, tell them about their dream schools, and to also write letters of recommendation. So are advisors. And I work in a system with 7 campuses. And we also have what we call the transfer dream team. So there's a transfer director on every campus. under the leadership of the amazing Xueli Lemons, but we work together all the time to make our students' transfer dreams come true. And I wanted to take this opportunity to shout out my colleagues and tell them that we do this work together. And I feel like it's my colleagues that push me to do better every day. So I just wanted to say that.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I miss hands ever. Going back though to the idea of research and the research that has been most helpful to you and the kind of research that you need in the future to help you do your work. Anybody else have any ideas?
I was just going to quickly add, because I do want to emphasize this. I appreciate it, Barbara, talking about research really does inform all the work that we're currently doing, as well as with other colleagues at other institutions who we talk to and say what's working, what's not, right? I think what's been foundational for us is research on transfer receptive culture and critical race theory. It's really important, particularly putting voices in the forefront from our BIPOC community, specifically with our transfer students and who we're serving, and making sure that that's really driving our work. So I think that's really important and wanted to call that out. Another area of interest for me personally, but I think I would love to see where this goes in the future and other researchers, is when we engage our students in designing efforts and what we do and our services, like what does it do for the students who are engaged in designing those services? So in thinking about student engagement, particularly at an institution like Portland State, where many of our students are, they commute to campus, they aren't as involved in traditional student clubs and activities. How do we engage them? And I think one way we do that is by letting them design and influence services that we offer. And so want to make sure that we're also saying, like, what does that do for their engagement? And I'm interested to see that in the future.
I think that's an excellent point. I think that so many times as a college administrator, I was guilty of it, of myself. We would get into a room and we would have this huge problem, and we would have maybe faculty in the room and trying to solve these huge complex problems, and no students in the room. And so just as, you know, the Phi Theta Kappa students, you know, we put them in situations where they're in leadership roles, but the administration of the college really has to embrace that and involve them in solving some of these complex problems. But going back to your question, as far as the direction of research, I think that there's stuff going on the 4-year side and the 2-year side, and then there's navigation. You know, the 2-year colleges do a great job of kind of getting them up to graduation, and then that transfer to college or even going to work, those navigation points, no one's really owning them. The 4-year colleges are not owning them, and the 2-year colleges are not completely owning them. So I think that we need to focus on, you know, meeting in the middle there. And I think on the 4-year side, definitely there's some financial issues. We talked about the financial aid, problems about the students. But on the 2-year side, I think it can't be emphasized enough how the faculty need to be very much trained as transfer coaches. I mean, informal training. I've got advisors. I have an advisor in Texas right now. I can call her about any student going anywhere in Texas. She's had so much experience with Phi Theta Kappa members going everywhere. She knows what courses will transfer everywhere in her head. And while that's kind of an extreme case, you know, we really need to look to the faculty and the people working in community colleges being really think of themselves as transfer coaches. But as far as the direction of research, I think, you know, we have to, I want to encourage everyone to really look at it through the eyes of the students and really start looking at their experiences and working from that instead of from the perspective of the institution, which is what we typically do.
Thank you. Dr. Ireland.
Thank you. I just wanted to, on the point about future research, just wanted to share a hope around decentralizing the scholarship on transfer success. I'm newer to this area of work, but I'm an educational psychologist, and I'm now really sharpened my lens to say, none of the literature that I'm reading in ed psych, for example, all the conceptualizations of higher ed are focused on four-year institutions, right? So I would really like to see some of the silos broken down so that transfer success, having it, in its own pocket is one thing, but I'd like to see it more in other areas of educational research, the way we conceptualize higher education to include two-year institutions and the transfer processes. But also, I'd also like to see disciplinary research, pedagogical research to be addressing those needs as well. I think there's this expectation that students are going to transfer into the university, and certainly there's a need for the campus community to embrace them, but they're going to live in the departments. And so it's really important that the undergraduate committee of the specific programs and departments are aware of the needs and the fit and the pathways. And that's something that only at the department level can people really work out those kinks. And so I'd like to also see pedagogical research in different fields be thinking about transfer students.
These are all such helpful ideas. And I don't want to minimize all the challenges the students face and how different the contexts are. So I like Lynn's point of meeting in the middle, that the student gets lost. They may have help at the 2-year, they may get help once they go to the 4-year, particularly if they have their major set, and so their department can take care of them when they get to the 4-year, but that point in the middle is a problem. Without minimizing it too much, from all the students that you've had contact with, what do you think is the area of greatest need or challenge for them that we need to be sure that we don't forget as we're moving forward and taking care of things?
Kind of pulling directly from the words of Dr. Ireland, thinking about silos. I think everyone in this space really does great work, but our work is only as good as our outreach to students themselves. So to what extent do students know about these resources? How are they accessing this information? And how can we ensure that students have the access they need? One of the things I've really been trying to think critically about with colleagues is, we know we are doing X, Y, and Z, but how are we making sure that students have the ability to find these resources? And how can we bring institutional offices together? So a theme that came up quite a bit in our conversation today is the role of finances. And I know that finances continue to be the top struggle for students. And oftentimes financial aid offices are inundated with student requests, and it's difficult for them to be responsive. Students are not always able to navigate the information. So how are we as practitioners able to support students in understanding information, navigating these different offices? It's very much so a maze for students and trying to find the right person to talk to about the right topic. And so I think, as much as we can think about centralizing our services as much as possible is a really important strategy that institutions should consider to better serve students.
Thank you very much. Anybody else about what you keep seeing as the main issue that we keep not addressing?
I think that obviously financial is number one. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I think another thing that we work on here, and I think that needs to be addressed, is the students' efficacy toward transfer, particularly toward a selective institution or something that they don't, they don't dream big enough at a community college. Very smart students and just not really opening themselves up to the possibilities of transferring here and there. So I think that we don't have really good peer networks in community colleges. One of the things we don't do well is create these peer networks of, hey, here's, students that went to Yale and went to Stanford, and we bring those students in to talk to all the students. And, just in case, hey, if you want to go to these colleges, you are way smart enough and you're, perfectly able to do it. Here's how you do it. So I think that really getting their efficacy about transfer really up. They sometimes they just don't see themselves doing it, and they'll get their 2-year degree and they'll literally be stopped because they don't believe enough in the fact that they can do it. So I think there's something to be gained with that.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I apologize for not seeing hands, but thank you all so much for being here today. It was an honor for me to learn from you, and I want to thank the audience for joining us as well. I'm sure everybody on the panel is eager to hear from you, so do not hesitate to reach out to them. You've noticed all the links on the side for you to be able to connect. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks. Bye-bye.